Cleft Friends, a project of Smile Foundation, is presenting a Titanic series about overcoming trauma. This will be presented over 5 short sessions on the Cleft Friends Facebook page and Instagram page every Wednesday at 3 p.m. sharp. My name is Helena Cullis. I'm the National Coordinator for Cleft Friends, a project of Smile Foundation. The biggest challenges that families affected by cleft lip and palate are facing during lockdown include disappointment, uncertainty, and anxiety. Many of our families have had their appointments have been postponed, their speech therapy is on hold, and some of our cleft communities have expressed a lack of emotional support from family and friends. We have reached out on various platforms to the cleft community to let them know that they're not alone and that together we are resilient. Resilient means that we're able to recover from really difficult situations. And I'm sure that many of us find that we're in really difficult situations at the moment. Today's broadcast with Lynette is one of the ways we're reaching out to our members as well as the public. And we trust that this initiative will create equal access for mental health services to everybody during lockdown. So keep listening. As you heard, this broadcast will only be 15 minutes, so we can tell you more at the end of this broadcast how you can donate special needs bottles to children affected by cleft lip and palate during lockdown, and you can make a difference in their lives. So the Titanic series will be presented over 5 short sessions on the Cleft Friends Facebook page and Instagram page. And we will be doing this every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Our support moms have been trained with basic counseling skills and the grieving curve, which is something that Lynette is going to be speaking to us about today. And it's something that we as parents of children affected by cleft lip and palate are very familiar with. When the pediatrician came to tell me that my little boy had been born with a cleft palate, I had no clue what a cleft palate was. And my first reaction was that he was going to say, "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Cullis, I've made a mistake. I'm supposed to be speaking to the mom in the bed next to you." And that was my first moment of denial in what we call the grieving curve. And so joining us is Lynette Dean, a counseling psychologist from Port Elizabeth, who's part of the Cleft Friends and the Smile Foundation team. Lynette, it's lovely to have you with us.
Thanks, Helena. Thanks for the invitation, and I hope it can be meaningful to everybody out there.
It's an absolute pleasure. And as I hand over to Lynette, I want to encourage everyone watching that you're not alone. The foundation of this talk applies not just to those people who have family or friends affected by cleft lip and palate, but to everybody. So please tag your friends in this post, please share it, start a watch party, so that we can all be informed on and understand how to overcome trauma. Over to you, Lynette.
Thanks, Helena. Well, also, as Helena mentioned, this series is called Overcoming Trauma. And when we speak about trauma, specifically in this series, it's not only going to be, trauma as if you're involved in a bank robbery or something like that. But whenever we go through a crisis in our lives, it's a form of trauma as well. So specifically for Cleft Friends, when you realize that time when your little one has been born with a cleft lip or palate, that is a trauma for you. It's obviously very traumatic, and it's obviously a crisis at the time as well. Helena mentioned a grieving curve. Now, what we mean, I haven't got a little sketch with me, Helena, and maybe we should have thought about that, but it's a grieving curve that's like a U shape, right? And whenever a crisis starts or wherever a trauma happens, it starts at the top of that curve. All right. Right. Now, when we're speaking about Titanic, you're probably wondering now, why are we talking about Titanic? Well, I always like to use the metaphor of a shipwreck when I'm dealing with clients that have trauma of any kind. And like we were saying as well with the corona at the moment, with the coronavirus, we're going through a trauma as well. We're going through another grieving curve because we're going through a period of uncertainty and sadness and anger and all of those things. So all of the emotions that we're experiencing during this COVID-19 are very similar to the emotions we experience when we are going through the crisis of having a child born with a cleft lip or palate, or whether we've been retrenched, or whether we've gone through a divorce. They're all similar emotions. So the first feeling that we're going to speak about today, I think we're going to speak about two feelings or two stages in the grieving curve. The first one is one of shock and one of denial. So if we're looking at, let's say, cleft lip or cleft palate, moms out there, that first feeling you felt when you saw your little one or heard that your little one had a cleft palate, or you saw them born with a cleft lip, and if you weren't expecting it, it was as if you were on the Titanic and you didn't realize that we were about to hit that major iceberg, which was going to upset the whole Titanic. So that first feeling that you feel is one of shock when you look at your little one and you say, this can't be. I can't believe it. Have I got the right baby? So that there's that feeling of shock, and then also that denial, you know, like, am I going to wake up and this is all going to be a bad dream? Yes, so that would be the like shock and the denial stage, which is the first stage of our grieving curve. Okay. Do you want me to go straight on to the next one, or should you ask me some things?
Yes, I think
Are you happy
that,
for me? Okay.
yeah, dive straight. We don't have much time, and I think that information helps to alleviate anxiety, and that's ultimately what we want to achieve in this session.
Okay. Well, I think what I can do then is maybe couple, because we were saying it's such a broad term in terms of the types of trauma and the types of crises we undergo. If we can just maybe like link it with maybe the COVID-19 now and the state that people are finding themselves in, that anxiety state, you probably find that there are people out there in the shock and the denial phase that are wondering, where did this COVID-19 come from? You know, we've read about things in books and we've seen movies that are based on science fiction, but we never realized it would happen to us as well. So people that are experiencing what we're all experiencing right now would also be a feeling of shock that there's this COVID-19 or this coronavirus that is affecting us. And we all, I think, have at times have actually wondered if it's just all a bad dream and that we're going to wake up and it's all going to have just gone away. All right. And if you think about that, if we put them together, we can have like multiple traumas or multiple crises happening at the same time, which would be the case, for example, if you've got a like little one whose operation has had to be postponed. I mean, that is very traumatic for the moms that have waited for their children to have this operation. And then in addition to that, they're still like living with the uncertainty of the coronavirus and when will it be over? When will they be able to have the operations again? So there's that shock and that denial put together. So you're having double traumas or perhaps multiple, you know, traumas during this time. I mean, one of the things that you might have also experienced this time has been the loss of a job due to retrenchment. And there again, there would be another shock and another denial. So we can't underestimate the impact on our emotions and on our mental state during a time like this, where we could be having numerous crises. So I've dealt with the shock and the denial of numerous ones now, but the next thing that happens is that we move into the anger phase, the anger or the disappointment phase. It doesn't have to be an intense anger, but it can be. And very often when we experience, or like when we start to realize that this trauma or this crisis has happened, we start to get angry at the world, angry at ourselves, angry at people whose Titanics never hit the iceberg. They always just seem to be plain sailing and they keep on going straight. So we can get angry towards those people, but we can also just feel an intense disappointment and sometimes even an envy, you know, like related to, like if we're related to the little ones born with cleft lip and cleft palate, we may look at other people's children with a sense of like envy and resentment that why didn't our children have the same experience when they were born and be born with a normal looking face, you know, because it's created so much anger within us. So that anger could be also, if you're a religious person, sometimes projected at God, you know, or at a divine power. Like, you know, how could this happen to us? You know, we prayed so hard for this not to happen, and now it's happened. So that anger could happen. And also what we will mention maybe in like subsequent series or like subsequent episodes is that these like stages that we've spoken about don't happen in order particularly and then just disappear.
Yeah.
Once we've experienced anger, they're done. It doesn't happen like that. We can keep on going backwards and forward between shock and anger.
No, that's awesome. I just want to say on Instagram, hello to Danielle and to India Rose. Thank you for joining us. And then I see Pietru's been stuck in a work Skype, so she's going to catch up with us. And Nazreen has made a comment here. She said, funny enough, having a cleft baby and going through that trauma has made us cope so much better with the pandemic. Obviously, we worry about upcoming surgeries.
Okay, that's an interesting point. It's a very interesting point because it's almost looked like she's actually comparing a trauma which they thought was the worst thing that could ever happen. And they're seeing as, you know, they compare it to this one. And that is a form of coping, by the way. When we compare our situation or a previous situation to something that they perceive as not being as bad as what they've experienced before, it's a form of coping with the present situation. So she's quite right, Nazreen. It's quite normal to do that.
Lynette, I just want to see, so today we've spoken about shock and denial and anger and disappointment. How will, let's say we say, okay, we are experiencing this, I get it, but how can I get out of this phase? And I know that we've only got a few minutes left, and I would like to encourage people to tune in again over the next 4 weeks to join us as we explore the rest of the grieving curve. How would you encourage somebody to be empowered, you know, not just to stay in shock and denial or anger or disappointment?
Well, I think we have to realize that it is a process and that we can't snap out of the anger. Anger is a normal part of the grieving process, so we can't deny that it's going to happen. But what I can say is that if you go through the grieving curve successfully, that anger will pass. It will get easier. It will get better. But I think an important thing is to acknowledge, though, at this point, that if you are feeling that anger and that frustration and that disappointment, that you're normal. It's a normal part of it. So you need to kind of sit it out and know that it's normal, but only if it interferes with your normal daily functioning. Should you perhaps seek to, you know, like seek help with a counselor or speak to a friend and use maybe meditation and relaxation, if that makes sense. But it's a normal part of grief. You know, so don't think you're abnormal if you're experiencing that grief. It's a normal part of the grieving process.
That's perfect. We've got Moira Gerst watching on Instagram. Moira, hi. Moira's watching from Smile Foundation. And I just wanted to jump to the point where we want to talk about the Cleft bottles, the special needs bottles that Smile Foundation is raising funds towards. So our goal during lockdown is to raise funds for 300 Cleft bottles, and they cost 120 Rand each. And I will post the link into the comments in the feed now of where you can click to donate towards that and make a difference in someone's lives during lockdown. Lynette, I think that this has been really beneficial. I know it's been short, and I would like to ask anybody who's watching if you think that a session like this, you know, for 15 minutes will benefit you or any of your friends or loved ones. Let us know. We would love to hear more from you, and I'd like to encourage you to just know that you're not alone, that we're in this together. And lastly, that we when we have resilience, we're able to recover from really difficult situations. And it doesn't matter whether your baby was born with a cleft lip and palate, or if you're faced in lockdown with a few scenarios that Lynette mentioned at the beginning. It's important for you to know that you're not alone. And from Cleft Friends, we would love to hear from you. So drop us a comment, send us a message, and I will put the comments in the feed. Lynette, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Elena. Thank you very much.
And we will meet up with you again next week, Wednesday, at 3 o'clock to continue this chat about the grieving curve and overcoming trauma. Thanks, Lynette.
Thanks,
Bye.
Elena. Bye-bye. Bye.
Help us reach our target of purchasing 300 Cleft bottles for babies in need. For only 120 Rand, you can change a baby's life. For more information, you can go to smilefoundationsa.org. See you next week, Wednesday, the 27th of May at 3 p.m. for session 2 in the Titanic series.